folks. How you doing, everyone? Hope you're all good. I am good. And I'm ready to draw. Without feedback, ideally. Hopefully that'll help. Please let me know how the sound and the visuals are. I'm going to assume they're okay, unless I hear otherwise. Let me know if the music needs turning up or turning down, please. You are my eyes and ears when it comes to this stuff. Alrighty, guys. We've got a good model today. Something a little, you know, little trickier maybe. Let's see. Should be fun. Okay. So let's change cameras. Otherwise, it'll be a rather dull affair. Okay. Okay, first person to give me a sound is okay, thumbs up, wins an imaginary prize. How about that? It's your birthday. Congratulations. Awesome. Okay. Let's start the timer. I think you know the drill. We're probably going to end up going about 20-25 minutes on the first one. Let's see how it goes. I'm going to just assume you can all hear me just fine. What else can I do? Sounds good. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. Okay. Alrighty. Let's start the timer. It always bumps me when I press F1 to start the timer. It also changes the page on my internet browser. Not great. Okay. Hami Saris says, I can't find the photos for today. They're on the March reference page. Hami. Okay. And you will find a link to the March reference page on the posts tab of the channel. Next you'll be asking me why are they on the March reference page? Well, I need to create a reference page. Well, it didn't feel like it was necessary to create a reference page for November. So here we are. Anyway, let's get thinking here. So looking just for the large directions of things, the shoulders, upper and lower torso. Our hips are sitting in about here. Our model decided to wear his, what should we call them, briefs to the proceedings. So we're going to have to do a little bit of guessing. Hopefully we're not guessing. We're going to have to use a little bit of our understanding of where things are to fill in a few of the gaps, so to speak. Great. Naruto. Glad you could make a live stream. Music's a tad loud. Thank you, Rick. Can you turn that down just a tad? Let me know how that goes. When I push the March pose reference link, it takes me to the graphic website. It's on the March page. Just give me a second. What can I do here? How can I help you guys? Is everyone having an issue finding the reference? I'm going to put a new link. Sorry guys, let's take a very quick time out here. on the posts tab of the channel, I'm going to put a quick post with the link for March. That should bring, well, it brought me there, so I'm going to assume it's going to bring you there too. Oh, let's not make that public. All channel members will work. All right, that is now there. No problem with ref, says Doug. Okay, so for those of you who are having problems, go to my channel page, hit the posts tab, scroll down, and you will see the very first post there is a link to the reference page for today and March and November. We're working on the first image. There's 4 in total, Richard. We're working on the first one. We just started. 4 minutes in. I should really get some drawing done. All right, hopefully that helps. Let me know. Should be straightforward. It's all on the same page as last week. But let me know. Anyway, that link is there now. Hopefully that will resolve the issue. Let's get some very direction as well. This leg is going away from us, right? Where this is a back view. So is this. And we've got where the calf is meeting with the upper leg. Coming down this way. Got us about here. Luckily, just not going off the top of the page here. Let's raise that just a tad. There we go. And that leg is sitting just a little bit higher than that leg in space. Okay. Got our very rough kind of shape here. Let's find our sacral triangle right there. Gluteus coming down this way. We're kind of doing something like that. So, okay. Let me know if you guys figured out the reference thing. Margot, let me know if you're still having trouble. Okay, so upper torso now. Let's find our rib cage. Once again, we don't have a lot to tell us where it is, other than we know it's going to be sitting in this region, right? We've got the exterior edge on this side. It's going to be roughly about there. And we're going to have the scapula sitting in here, coming in, sitting here. Look at where this, if we come across the form here, the elbow's sitting right about here, right? So that's a pretty good kind of form of measurement. Something like so. And the wrist sitting right around where the knee is, right here. Something like that. I was watching Glenn Vilppu videos yesterday. His gestures are amazing. Yeah, he's great. Hand sitting in here. Deltoid. Sitting here, tricep. attaches at the scapula and the humerus. So that's going to be sitting in roughly in there. That'll do us for now. We'll refine all this stuff as time goes on. Okay. Scapula, coming up this way. Can I see the upper arm here? And there's some interesting kind of little bits and pieces for us to look at here. Tricep. It's going to be sitting in this region and here. Front scan. We'll come back to it. Occipital ridge is going to be about here, give or take. Can't see it because obviously it's behind the hairline. Something like so. He's actually holding a box in this arm, which we'll draw, just because it kind of might give a bit of context to those. Something like so. I think this is a little short. This is probably up about here. Now's a really good time to just take a quick look at things in general and decide if our proportions are roughly right. Because now would be a very good time to change things, should that not be the case. And the calf is sitting in there. Now this, guys, I'm going to draw, like, I'm always kind of a bit torn when these models are wearing garments like this. I'm always torn on whether we should draw them or not. Part of me is like, yes, we should, they're there. They also help us not get demonetized on YouTube, which is awesome. But they also kind of wreck the flow of the drawing. Let's leave them off for now. See what happens. Okay, I want to draw, there's a little bit of back anatomy. We're getting lots of bumps and lots of cool looking things on our model, but we need to kind of understand a little bit of what it is that we're looking at. We have the trapezius, obviously, which attaches at the occipital ridge, blah, 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 comes down, runs along the edge of the scapula, and then kind of comes down this way. And we normally would draw that kind of as a V shape, right? Coming down like so. And in its static kind of state, let's say, it would be quite V-shaped. But as those of you who can see the reference can see that when it's under tension the way it is here, we actually kind of, and it's under tension with the other muscles around, we actually get more of kind of this shape going on. And the same kind of on this side. Kind of doing something like that, right? Latissimus, we can't really see it clearly, but it would be useful for us to kind of add it just to help subdivide this form. Whoever posts the best rendering of the box on Discord wins a free sticker provided by Rick. Awesome. There's a pun there. I'm not nearly quick enough to know what it would be. Okay, iliac crest is coming up this way. For the glutes, let's get in that. You can kind of see it, but we're just going to kind of emphasize that butterfly kind of motif that we talk about. Same thing on this side. It's kind of sitting in here, right? Something like so. There's a garment sitting about there. The leg of the garment is on that side there, and on this side it's kind of wrapping around this way. All right, let's do a bit of tie down. Oh, you know what? I'll do some tie down first. There is some very nice, with this whole set of poses, there's some very nice kind of division between what's in light and what's in shadow. And we should definitely shadow map and get in some tone. Okay, so let's see, what are we drawing? Oblique, coming up this way. Oblique meeting up with the rib cage, coming up this way. Meeting up with the latissimus, and then the scapula sitting in here, and then meeting up with the deltoid up there. Okay. Give ourselves that little mental checklist as we go. Tricep coming in to the elbow, sitting up there. Tricep meeting up with the deltoid, sits in here, comes in, and then meets up with the trapezius, and it goes something like that, right? Sorry about that, Margot. Sorry you were having some issues. Well, luckily you found the reference. Something like so. Let's have a look at the other side. And coming in with the hamstrings in here, sitting in here, and something like that. You can actually see the mass of those hamstrings sitting in there, right? And then you can those tendons kind of sitting here, head of the calf, top of the calf kind of sitting in there, something like that. Coming down to our ankle. Sitting in there, Achilles tendon. Okay. Same thing, so we got the gluteus sitting in here, and then kind of meets up with our hamstring. And that comes across, and we've got that tendon idea here. So this is kind of like a volumetric mass sitting in here, right? These two hamstring muscles sitting in there. Pencil slipped, honest. Coming in up here. and then to the oblique, which is under, right, there's some compression on this side, so the oblique has kind of got more, on this side I've actually kind of, well, that's actually gluteus medius. This is the oblique on this side, right? Oblique sitting here. There's a bit more compression on this side. That makes sense. Coming up and almost immediately meeting up with the latissimus and then the scapular latissimus combo coming up that way. Making some kind of some refinements to where things sit just ever so slightly when I go from the first initial pass to the tie down. Oh, there we go. I have an anatomy test for you. Where is the popliteal fossa located? Hint, it's visible in this drawing. Never heard of it. I could start guessing, but I would be just guessing. So you're going to have to enlighten us. Pixel art JJ. Yeah, I don't know. Popliteal fossa. I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly on top of everything else. And if it turns out it's got another name, but the other name is really common, you are banned from the channel. Okay? Just kidding. Anyway. Let's see now. Oh, really? There is a lot of anatomy I don't know the name of. So I wouldn't be at all surprised. There's a term for the back of the knee. I think you may have to impose that ban on yourself, pixel art. Sorry. This is not my doing. It's unfortunate. It is the term for the back of the knee. Why have I never heard of it? And is it just a general term for the entire back of the knee, or is there a specific piece of anatomy that it actually I am going to grab that text right now and I'm going to put it into Google. Let's see what Google has to say for itself. The popliteal fossa is a diamond-shaped space behind the knee joint. So it is formed between the muscles in the posterior compartments of the thigh and leg. This anatomical landmark is a major route by which structures pass between the leg and the thigh. So it's actually a space. It's not technically, it doesn't sound like it's a piece of anatomy. If going off that, it is it's a landmark. I feel like maybe I'm missing something. A shallow depression located at the back of the knee joint. Okay, well there you go. The back of the knee is called corva in Spanish. All right, thank you, Jose. I should get back to the reference. Well, there you go. Okay, so you can stay. I'll allow it, but it feels like you got us on a technicality there. Just like the triangular fossa of the ear, for example. Okay. I feel like you kind of took advantage of my stupidity. Don't appreciate that. Okay. Let's stick to body parts I know them. Please. Don't be making me look bad. I can do that by myself. Deltoid, shoulder muscle. Let's not use any technical terms. They're coming off the shoulder muscle to the pointy bit on the top of the shoulder, coming into the lower neck and coming up that way. Nice. Where are we at? 24 minutes. So I think I think we're at a point now. The diagrammatical part of this is essentially done. Please don't ban me. Don't worry, Pixel Art, you're not banned. All are welcome. You just need to, you know. Easy questions only, please. I always get nervous when people start asking me, what's the name of this thing? And then I start second guessing myself like crazy. Although I had no clue about that. But even when people ask me simple things like, what's the humerus? I start sweating. It's part of your skull. And then it's like, okay, calm down. I know it's not part of your skull. Okay, let's shadow map. I think we're going to follow the lighting source. That's on the reference, because it kind of looks cool. So let's do some core shadows, some large divisions between what is in the light and what is in shadow. So with this little passage in here is in light. And we have a little triangle of light here. Then we've got like a slither of tone, obviously up where the back muscles are, up in here. Like that. And then on this side, something like that. just recently started drawing backbones and muscles. Iago, right? I don't normally start with back poses, so you're lucky. This is a kind of unusual. It's because I wanted to I try and do at least one standing pose, and this one I found interesting, and I thought it'd be a good one to get us warmed up. But normally we would start with a standing front pose. And while we're talking about poses and that, I would be remiss if I didn't give a quick shout out and plug, mind you, to Grafit Studio, who without their reference, you know, would make proceedings a little less fun. And they did reach out to me, and I'm very happy to you know, remind you guys that they apparently have a Black Friday sale all this week with 50% off their reference packs. So if you've ever been on the fence about getting a pack that went, if it was half the price, I would get it. Now it's the week to do that. Details. Well, if you click on the link, which will actually take you to my website, and I have to do that because unfortunately Grafit Studio have nudity on their website, and the last time I had a live link going directly to Grafit Studio, I got a slap on the wrist from YouTube. So I linked to my website, which takes you to a link on their website, which will give you discounts, and you put in the discount code and all of that, and I get a little kickback, which is always nice. You guys get a reference pack for half price, and everyone's happy. And then also Grafit Studio go, oh look, there is something to be said for having a professional relationship with Richard, so we'll let him continue what he's doing. It's in everyone's best interest. But seriously, now's a really good time to get some reference packs if you're looking. And I can say, hand on heart, I do thoroughly recommend their stuff. Their reference is excellent. Do I wish they had a bit more older models? Absolutely. But such is life. I do get why they focus on the stuff that they do, because I'm sure it's the stuff that sells the most. Oh yeah, our little cube here. You came for the drawing and you got rambling. You're welcome. Yeah, something like this. It's a bit of a mess, isn't it? Let's see if we can just quieten things just a little bit with a little bit of blending. Just hit this with the kneaded eraser just a little bit here and there. And hopefully that help the read just a little bit. Something like that. Okay, I think we're done with that one. What's the name of the reference pack site? Well, the name of it's Grafit Studio who make the reference packs. If you go down into the description of this live stream and you expand it, you will see a link to my website, which has a link to every reference pack that we've ever, well, not every one we've ever used, but at least like the last 50 or so. Okay, next pose. What did we do? 33 minutes. Grafit Studio on Gumroad. Yes, they also are on ArtStation too. But all my links on my website are via Gumroad. Because if I started linking to every place that every website, it just get really messy. So I figured I'd just go with Gumroad. It's easy, and also it just it's more straightforward that way. The light source is actually at 9 o'clock. Too low in my opinion. You could split hairs there. Yeah, I guess maybe 10. But yeah, it is quite low. You're right. What I like about it though, Rick, where I think it has an advantage over a higher light source, is that it gives us quite an even distribution of all the side of the form is fairly evenly lit, right? The higher we go with that light source, the more we tend to light the tops of forms, and then they turn. And so this gives us that very kind of classic 60-40 kind of division, which is, you know, makes life a little more straightforward. In saying that, the next pose would beg to differ. We're going on to pose 2, guys and gals. This is going to be a little bit more of a challenge. True, but for ArtStation I think you need an account to view it. You probably do, and I don't also use ArtStation. I used to. I no longer have an account on ArtStation. But yeah. All right. Next pose. The name of the reference pack. Once again, if you go to click that link, it'll show you the name of that reference pack. It's, if you look at today's date. Here, I've got it here actually. It's 1100 athletic male sketching poses. 1100 plus. It's a good set. It's the kind of set, you know, we could work off many times and still there's a lot of variety in poses, which is nice. All right, let me reset the clock. Let's go. Set the 2. These past few days I've been struggling to draw 2 types of poses. Well, you're going to have to tell us what they are. Here I go. All right, let's look at this pose for a second. It's a tricky one. I want to find the axis of the shoulders, even though we've got this trapezius muscle that could very easily throw a spanner in the works, as far as trying to find that. But I'm going to go with what I think is roughly the axis between the shoulders, the deltoids, right, coming across this way. So I'm going to go with that for now. And we're almost seeing kind of like, this is, you know, we talk about cubes and cylinders, blah, blah, blah. If we're looking at this as kind of like the axis of the shoulders, what we're almost seeing is kind of like the top of the shoulder girdle here. And if we were drawing this box, you could make a strong argument for we're drawing something like this, right? As the top of the box in there. This box obviously representing the upper torso, the rib cage, and sitting kind of in here. We could see it, the neck sitting in here. Our center line is about here. We've got the clavicle, pit of the neck sitting right there. Oh, sorry, sternum, the top of the sternum there, pit of the neck. Clavicle coming up this way. You can see very clearly that dip of the acromion process where the clavicle finishes its journey, sitting up about here, right? So we know just from that the head of the humerus is sitting right about approximately here. This arm is coming out this way. Forearm is sitting about here. Something about here. Look at the, if we look at from the distance of the clavicle down to the pectoral muscle, it's really quite decent distance there, right? This coming up, meeting up with the deltoid sitting in here. Bicep coming, attaching here, coming this way. Tricep sitting on this side, something like that. So when we have a pose like this, it's just one of those cases where it's really useful for us to draw volumetrically. Thelgo says, I read this comment, didn't I? These past few days I've been struggling to draw two types of poses. I've been wondering if you could draw one of them. Well, Thiago, A, I'm drawing what I have in front of me right now, maybe another time, but also I'd need to know what those poses are. Okay, side of the form, front of the form, right? Same with the hips. Coming down this way. Rib cage ends its journey around here. Iliac crest is probably about here. Coming down, acis coming around the form this way. Got our stomach. Sternum coming down. Rib cage is going to be sitting in roughly about there. Navel sitting about here. Something like this. Yeah, pectoral coming down this way. Sitting here. Same on this side. Coming up this way. Can't see the head of the humerus or even the clavicle on this side because his head's in the way. But if we could imagine it, we know that the clavicle's coming up to here. Right, pectoral muscle, deltoid sitting in here, etc. Clavicle's here, right? Or manubrium. The chin is sitting about here. And then up from the clavicle, his ear is about here. And coming off the back of here is this tricep or trapezius, sorry. It's sitting in here. Something like that. Tricky pose. All right, legs. Now let's look at this. So, roughly speaking, his navel is here, right? Halfway between the bottom of the rib cage and the iliac crest. We know that the navel sits, and true to form, it sits there today as well. Now, if we come across, this leg is coming up this way. The knee is sitting about here. I don't know if you can see, right? If we want to think about these volumes in terms of cylinders, boxes, etc. This leg is quite box-like, and we can almost kind of see this thing kind of going on, right? The side of the leg, and then the underside, the back of the leg, sitting here. Yes, and we have a good point, Rick. We have our negative space, which is going to also, negative space being, for an example, you know, if we look at the overall space in here, outside of our form, right? So if we look at, say, for example, the distance between the pectoral muscle here and the leg here, this whole shape in here is the negative space, just as this shape in here is like negative space. And we can use those as for measurement as much as we can use what we'll call the positive space as well. So yeah, it's a very useful tool. And when measuring, I'm using negative space probably as much as I'm using positive space. They all serve us to help us find our way with the measurement. Because, you know, whether this guy is 6 or 8 or 42 heads high, that is going to be somewhat useless form of measurement for us on a pose like this. That's why I don't use it. Look, even like if we're thinking about this as a box, right? This is the side of the box, then we're coming to the underside here. Look at the way that the knee acts. It's very box-like in its nature, and it acts as kind of the end of this form, sitting in here. You see then fibula coming back this way. Something like that. Same thing on, now let's look at this other leg. So, all right, ASUS is here. So we know that the journey of our leg is kind of starting at that point, at least for a certain group of muscles. And if we look at, we've got this top surface to the leg here. Coming down this way. Once again, negative space. If we want to get back to that for just a second, if we look at the underside of his leg here, then we look at that distance. That kind of helps us also understand where this leg ends here. The front of that box for the leg. This is why it's useful to not kind of say, oh, you know, boxes, oh, legs are always cylinders, or they're all, you know, when we prescribe a basic shape to them. Because I think in a case like this, thinking in terms of these structures almost like boxes is actually going to be more useful than thinking of them as like tapered cylinders, because of the nature of the pose and the way that the light is hitting it and all the rest. So it just, you know, you use what makes sense for the challenge at hand, so to speak. So this is here, coming across the box that way. Glutes sitting in here. So we've got the sorry, I'm having my brain has gone blank here on names. Anyway, gluteus sitting in here. Oblique, thank you, Richard. The oblique sitting in here. Right, and this whole area is, this is oblique. Tensor fasciae latae coming down this way, gluteus medius next to it here, etc. Rectus femoris at the front, vastus lateralis on the side, medialis on the inside, and that's going to help us with just the major muscle groups of the front of the leg here. The box-like form you just added really helps me so much. Good, that's great, Margot. Yeah, look, once again, same thing for right up here for the rib cage. Can really help us understand where the form is turning in space. So yeah, it's useful because we can get hung up on the concept of, and rightly so in many cases, you know, thinking of things as cylinders and spheres, especially with the human body, when in actual fact, sometimes sometimes it's a hybrid. Very often you've heard me talk about, you know, things turning from kind of like boxes into cylinders, or finding a shape that's kind of somewhere between the two, that makes the most sense to use. It all really depends on the challenge at hand. Right, for now. So we're just, you know, we're just getting things roughly in place. I think we're kind of getting there. Getting close to our tie down stage. Knuckles sitting in there. Fingers, etc. This guy has his hair slicked back within an inch of its life. He means business. Okay, something like that. I think I have enough information here, at least for me to want to move on and actually tie down some stuff. We've got some lovely shapes to work with. Hopefully we can do them justice. Let's see. Take a second here to get some things in mind. Really want to try at least to push some of this tension that's on this pectoral muscle. So kind of trying to be mindful of that. In here. Tiago says, have I sent an image to you just for you to see? I guess you could email through my website. It'd probably be the easiest way. But I'm probably not going to get to it today, Tiago. To be honest, you know, obviously we're in the middle of things here, but you know, it's also always something that I can look up offline. But you know, generally speaking, I'm not really doing a whole lot of stuff outside of the stream right these days. But you can send it and we'll see what happens. Okay. Oh, and by the way, sorry. Sorry, I was just checking something. Okay. All right. Pectoral. So now let's think about what is going on this side here. Do you want to be careful I don't make this guy too thick? I'm actually going to hop across. In fact, Latissimus sitting in here. Pectoral muscle coming in this way. Once again, we got that stretch coming up this way. Thank you, Rick. Very kind. Much appreciated. Really, truly. Okay. Something like so. And then we've got the abdominal / rib cage. It's kind of coming down this way, sitting in here. And you know, the guy's got very little belly fat or anything like that, but we've got tiny bit of compression in this area in here. But yeah, not much at all. I wanted to establish this edge before coming back to this one because there could have been a tendency. I think we're actually okay where we are with our measurement, but there could have been a tendency for him to get too wide, and it felt to me at least like this was the more important edge to get right first. Got a little bit of wiggle room, so to speak, on this side. So yeah. So the oblique is actually kind of almost gone there, sitting in, then coming up to the latissimus, the scapula type of thing there. Excuse me. There's these shorts there. Unfortunately, this is one of those areas where we lose a little bit of the anatomy because of the garment he's wearing. But anyway, we can we know that the rectus femoris is attaching the aces right here. right? Oh, right at this point here. So even so, we can kind of get a sense of what's going on, right? The Lion King. Did you just say that, Rick? I don't know. You think you know someone. And his garment is doing something like that. Okay. Then yeah, we've got the long journey of this muscle coming off here, this rectus femoris slash vastus medialis slash sartorius, if we want to get into anatomy. Oh. And down. Botch this leg up. Alright, sorry, we'll fix it. Let's soften that line up, because that line is the wrong one. I think everything's just a little bit tad wide. Okay. Take two. Wow. Not doing too well with these pencils. Because they're too short, they should not be used in this way. I'm being a bug. Okay. Yeah, not thrilled with the way that this has gone, to be honest, but such is life. Excuse me. This is actually a bit further out, isn't it? Yeah, we're fudging the numbers here a little bit with the measurements, but I'm thinking we're going to get at least away with it enough. But yeah, I'm taking some liberties, let's just put it that way. You see, I won't really talk about those, we'll just continue like nothing happened. Okay. Something like that. Okay, now we're kind of getting away with it, kinda, sort of. Let's see here. So coming off the neck, trapezius meeting up here with the acromion process, the heads of the deltoid. Right, sitting in there. Then we can see that head of the deltoid there coming down this way. Tricep coming in here. Something like so. Yeah, tricky pose, right? Deltoid actually is all the way back, attaches all the way back here, right? You can kind of see that little divot right there when it meets up with the clavicle. And we actually know that the trapezius is sitting in here. Same thing. Kind of meets up here. Sternocleidomastoid coming up this way, and that gives us that little kind of gap. Maybe we could call it a fossa. Probably not. Anyway, sorry, do an old joke. Yeah, some great shapes, just with the anatomy in general. Once again, it comes back to this thing of, and it's so funny to me because it's like, whether it's drawings that you put online, you know, on social media, or just even the streams, when we're drawing the men, they don't get nearly the attention that, for some reason, that the, you know, the streams or the drawings of the women do. And yet we get a chance for design language with the men, that it just brings a very different kind of set of ideas to the table. And I think it's important to draw both, even if your focus is on drawing females, for example. I think that being able to draw both and to be able to understand the mechanics and even the way that they both move somewhat differently and they pose differently, it's just it's fascinating to me. And it's a pity they don't get, just not a little bit more, you know, demand, let's say, for that type of stuff. In that pose, it would be possible to see the median part of the trapezius. The median part? I'm not sure exactly what you mean, Thiago. So we've got the trapezius, right? It attaches at the back of at the occipital ridge at the back of the skull here, right? Which we can't see because the hair is kind of sitting in the way. And then the trapezius comes down this way, down the neck, which is kind of sitting here, and then into the trapezius sitting here. At the back, it's meeting up with the ridge of the scapula, and at the front here, we can see it meeting up with the shoulder here, and the clavicle here, sitting in this whole region here. That's all that we can see of the trapezius. So I'm not sure when you say medium part, if there's something that we're missing that you're expecting to see. If you could see the reference, it would probably all kind of make a bit more sense, let's say. Okay, let's do a little. Yeah, we'll follow the lighting on the reference, but it's going to be a little bit tricky actually. But we'll put in some core shadows and. This form turning in space here. It's again this box-like structure. Trying to picture what the same pose would be like with a female model. You'd have stating the obvious, but you know, obviously where we have mass would change, and that trapezius, this very bulky trapezius would, I think, be, you know, much more toned down. Yeah, once again stating the obvious, narrower shoulders, right, wider hips. We'd be just pushing proportions in a different way. I've always used to love drawing more generous forms of females. I've come to appreciate so much the divine muscles on some males. Yeah, look, it is funny because it's like, look, it's not like you don't get females that, you know, where we can see a lot of muscle definition, but generally speaking, those rounder forms that females have are easier to draw, in my opinion. And it's easier, it's one thing I'll say for absolute certain, and maybe once again I have to say in my opinion, right, but much easier to find rhythmical ideas on females than males. It's not that you can't find them on the men, but women tend to find rhythm when drawing women is much easier, you know. So look, there's a place for everything, right? Let's block in some of this. end up just feeling like you're putting the whole drawing into tone. Hopefully it will balance out in the end. See all of this is in shadow too. Now, I guess this foot too. All right, I think we're getting close here. No, I think you are. From the back, there's a lot of trapezius. From the front, there's not much trapezius, Thiago. Or am I crazy? No, I'm not going to suggest you're crazy. What I'm going to suggest you do is Google trapezius and have a look at it. I think that would be the easiest. I could get into a whole trapezius discussion right now, but from the front, we only see the trapezius coming down. It attaches about 1/3 of the way along the clavicle, and we see it in this region and here, right? That's the trapezius, the traps, right? That's what gives us this kind of V shape off the neck. At the back, the trapezius, as I said, it attaches at the occipital ridge. It comes down, it meets up with our shoulder blades, our scapula, and then it goes down the back in a V shape. Look at an anatomy reference online. You'll see what I'm talking about. Maybe you're thinking thinking of something else. All right, guys. Now, let me just. I think that'll do it. We are moving on to the third pose, which is going to require us to go into landscape mode. So it's time to move some pencils. Time to freshen up the pencil. Let's put on a new one. Okay. That was a fun pose. Tricky. But yeah, coming back to that idea about us, coming back to simple forms, when we have a pose like that, where can we find, where forms turn in space, and using a box may be more useful than, a cylinder in some cases. Now, this next pose is a case of where we can find rhythm, I would say, rather easily in our form. Definitely, more so than there's a lot more built-in rhythm, let's say, in the pose. When we've talked about this many times, but when we've got heavily foreshortened poses, it's much harder to find long rhythmical ideas. That's where we shift to working in more boxes and cubes, and then we find the rhythm within the smaller anatomical ideas like muscle and tone and light and that type of thing. And so we kind of switch up our kind of thought process. Anyhow, this is a pose where we do have long forms. Sorry, I just want to make sure. Maybe I'll move this whole thing over just a little bit. There we go. Cool. All right. I think that'll do it. Let me reset the clock. Okay, excuse me. Let's draw. Now, we obviously want to fit everything on the page. So I'll just work real loose so we can find where everything sits. If you're finding yourself constantly drawing off the edge of the page, you really need to try and establish very early on where the outer perimeters are of your model. So I'm going to come down. The hand is going to be sitting roughly here, right? That's my outer edge for at least his upper torso. And with that in mind, knowing that I need probably at least the same amount of space again, I really want to be conservative with where I end his torso. Look at the way rhythmically we come down off the rib cage, down off the lower torso. But for those of you who have access to the reference, look how we come straight into the rhythm of that leg there. It's almost like we got this kind of bow right the way across the form here. And then this leg sitting here, our knee is here. This knee's sitting about here. This leg is kind of coming up towards us a little bit. The long tibia coming down this way. And then down to this leg, which is then overlapping here in this foot. Rib cage sitting in here. So at least now we know that the toe is going to be sitting here, right? His left leg, which is the outer edge of the form here, and the hand here. And if I just look at those in relationship to each other and I go, you know, if I can just squint, this wrist is sitting just a little bit lower than where this ankle is. I'm not going to use it really as a form of measurement, but it can't hurt at this point, just so that, you know, this whole part of the legs aren't floating up into the air. If I just go, okay, roughly speaking, if I drew an imaginary line across there, yeah, that looks about right. Okay, so that's going to hopefully keep things from floating. All right. Manubrium sitting about here, right? Pit of the neck. Clavicles coming up this way. Head of the humerus. And there's a stretch here. Pectoral kind of coming down this way. Rib cage is sitting in about here. Slightly less tension on this side. Arms coming to about here and then goes behind his form. But once again, coming from the clavicle. Pectorals sitting about here. Coming in, oblique. So I think I'm pretty satisfied with where my larger markers are for right now. And now we can actually see the chin on our subject. He's looking down. His chin is actually below the manubrium here. Probably his chin is sitting about here, right? If I draw here, trapezius is here. And this arm is coming out this way. Now we've got this pectoral coming out this way. I think my proportions are a little bit off here. Let's see. Come back to it. Pectoral sitting in here. Coming down rib cage. Oblique. Coming down to the aces, which will be sitting here. The oblique is sitting in there. That's good. Center line's coming down this way. Coming around. Navel is sitting about here. And once again, we got these trunks. We'll call them to think about. Trunk line is sitting at the aces, right at the belt line, which I guess is kind of useful. Yeah, the humerus is up here. Deltoid is sitting in here. Biceps sitting there. So. Sartorius, we can kind of see it, right? This sitting in this region here, subdivider that's making the thigh do that. It's really useful in that respect. And this calf is coming out this way, coming down. And there, tibia coming out this way. I'm just going to change this music a little bit. Should we go? Excuse me. Okay. I have difficulty drawing the shoulder from that kind of angle. The thing is, if we understand some of the mechanics of the shoulder girdle and how the clavicle and the head of the humerus interact, it can really help kind of demystify and help give us a solid plan on how to handle that. But yeah, look, it's tricky for sure. I want hot chocolate. I want hot chocolate too, Rick. What are we going to do about it? I actually, you know, it's so funny you should mention hot chocolate. On a whim, I ordered a hot chocolate the other day. I was at the airport. And I ordered a hot chocolate, which I haven't done in, I don't even know how long. Don't even know why I ordered it, but I enjoyed the hell out of it. I was like, why don't I always order tea or coffee. I'm like, why don't I order this more often? You know my other life hack? Especially in places that I don't know? I'll sometimes just, and this is like an old person move, isn't it? I'll just order dessert. A cup of tea and a nice piece of cake, or a nice, you know, apple pie or something. Especially if you see a bunch of things on the menu that you're kind of suspect on how it's going to end up turning out. I'll just go straight to dessert. I don't even care anymore. I know, I'm a rebel. What can I tell you? That's how I'm living. That's how I'm living life these days. Crazy, I know. But there you go. Now, if I look at where the pit of the armpit is here, or, you know, at least roughly where it is, I come across, this one is actually just a little bit higher because of this stretch in the arm. So I do want to be mindful of that. Because right now it's kind of quite a bit lower, right? So my measurement is telling, it tells me that my measurement's off, and it actually will help with the length of this arm, which I was already a bit sus on. So in actual fact, if I just say stay true to the logic of that, and I say, okay, this pectoral muscle's coming down this way. Look how that fixes all the problems. Not all of them, some of them. Knobbly bit, and we're coming across. Yulan, how's everyone this afternoon? We're doing great. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. What are you rebelling against? Salad? Yeah. And its ilk. That's right, Rick. Salad. You can't trust it always. For anyone just joining us, I feel like you cheapened my argument, Rick. Meaning it down to salad. Have a hot chocolate. Thank you, Margot. I will do just that. I'll have a hot chocolate. I actually think I have some in the pantry. Need to get that out. Once I'm finished with the stream, I'm going to go light a fire. Get myself a hot chocolate. And I don't know, do something very British, like watch the Great British Bake Off or something like that. Sounds like an awesome time to me. I know, you all think I live some kind of crazy rock and roll lifestyle. And look, I know I give off that kind of intention, or that vibe, but you know what? I'm just a bake-off guy deep down. Richard, what would you recommend when stuck in anatomy? I can't figure out some things, but I always ruin the process. When you're stuck in anatomy, Newline, I would actually recommend that you simplify your learning of anatomy and how you want to understand anatomy. I think a lot of these books and a lot of instructors out there put an emphasis on learning every minute little idea when it comes to anatomy, and I don't think it's what gets you the most bang for your buck. I think you want to learn the large ideas, right? Like, and to start with the super simple ideas, like, you know, and then you can learn the smaller ideas kind of on an as to know basis. And so what I would recommend is, as you're doing your figure drawing, I would strongly recommend that, like, especially if you're working from like reference at home or something, have an anatomy book beside you. If you're drawing something for the first time, or that you're drawing it for, you know, a new idea, pop the anatomy book open, or whatever your anatomy source is, and you know, make a note, and learn it piecemeal as and when needed, rather than saying to yourself, I need to understand the entirety of human anatomy before I can start drawing. You know, this is neither fun nor practical, or arguably even possible. So learn the large ideas. Even, like, you know, go one step further and say, it's not even about knowing the anatomy. It's about knowing some basic ideas with landmarks. And if you understand those, the jigsaw starts to kind of come together as different poses present different problems. Some are going to present foreshortening problems. You know, a pose like this, we're not dealing with foreshortening in any meaningful way, really. A little bit of foreshortening on this leg, but like, so what? But different poses are going to present different problems. And so learn it as you need it. And also, I think it's so much more, as I said, it's so much more important to understand basic ideas. You know, I'm using a large idea for the upper and the lower torso, two boxes. You can't simplify anything really much more than that, right? And what a wonderful thing. Now we can subdivide that infinitely down to, complexity. But if you look at the upper and the lower torso in their simplest forms, we're talking about two boxes, or even simpler, two rectangles, right? Then subdivide, subdivide, subdivide. And then you can start to take the large ideas and you can start to get your mind around them and not be just completely blown away by the complexity. So that would be my advice. And then a lot of drawing. Nothing will get you through a rut like drawing your way through it. Thank you, says Newline. You're very welcome. Is there a way I can show you my work to identify the problems I'm running into? Even a difficult time seeing in 3D space, because I'm relearning how to draw. Newline, if I may be so bold as to suggest that you check out, if you haven't already, check out my video on my channel, my figure drawing fundamentals. It really, I believe, it really gives a good kind of map on a process to follow, right? I can't, unfortunately, I can't really take on looking at people's work right now. I've got a lot going on at this end, so it's not ideal. I'm not even taking students right now on my website, but start there. 3D, all of this idea about seeing in 3D space and all of that, I touch on all of that, not just touch on it, I go on, I bang on about it in that video. If you haven't seen that, start there. And then, and follow along on the streams. If it's only like $3 a month or something to be a member of the stream. You'll have access to the reference. You can draw along with me, and we can problem solve together, right? That would be my advice for right now. Okay. Any trick for drawing the shoulder in that pose? Something like a landmark and so on. Well, I kind of discussed it as we were going, Thiago, in as much as, even though we can't see it because this head is in the way, which I've kind of erased for right now, but the pit of the neck, the manubrium, if we understand where that is, right, we can all kind of see that. It's a relatively straightforward thing to see if the head isn't in the way of it. But that is the beginning of this whole kind of wishbone system, like a car, right? We've got the clavicles on the front, we've got the scapula on the back, and they kind of meet where the head of the humerus is. There's something called the acromion process that comes off the scapula right here, which kind of is the meeting junction point for all these ideas. So when I was drawing this to start with, I was thinking, okay, so once again, this head was in the way, but I'm thinking, okay, where is the manubrium? Clavicles coming up this way. You can see where I've drawn here. I've drawn the head of the humerus below that. And I've kind of come down with the ideas for the arm. As I said on the other pose, this deltoid is starting about, the shoulder muscle, starting about 2/3 of the way along the clavicle here. And it kind of comes down this way. And a teardrop, and it comes down and attaches to the humerus down here. Now, yes, there's these multiple heads of the deltoid, and we can, once again, as I was saying to Newline, start with a large idea. We can subdivide. But in the simplest idea, if I think about where the manubrium is, and I understand that there's this clavicle coming up, and the head of the humerus is underneath it, and that the deltoid starts 2/3 of the way along the clavicle, that's enough information to understand how all of these kind of ideas are going to relate to each other, right? We know the pectoral muscles coming off there, etc. So it's about finding that balance, about understanding some basic ideas with anatomy, and then if we understand those, then we can repeat that process, right? But I'm always looking, the first thing I'm always looking for is the axis of the shoulders, where the manubrium is, where the clavicle are, and through repetition, you're going to, if you do it enough times, you're going to understand how these things work in relationship to each other, and how we can kind of make sense of what it is that we're seeing, right? Excuse me. So I hope that makes sense. Sketches can also be posted on Discord. Richard won't critique them, but Rick will. Nice. Yes, if you're a member, you also have access to the Discord channel, and new members, you need to know that too. I'll post a fresh link in the chat in the post tomorrow for the new members. There is plenty of them already in the posts, but if you want one up at the top, I'll post one tomorrow, and you guys can go and be members in the Discord channel, and discussion happens over there. People like Rick are very happy to give feedback. Even I've been known to give feedback over there a time or two. But yeah. Where are we at? It's 10 to 7, and we are 3.5 poses in, and we haven't even done a lighting pass on this one. I think I'm gonna forego it. I think this works pretty good as a diagrammatical drawing, and if I'm honest, I'm kind of done with it. So I think I'm going to move on. Haven't really done much with the head. The head's a bit of a bust. Whatever. It's going in the fire anyway. Jesse interjecting with some truth bombs. All right, I'm gonna do this last pose. I think, yeah, well, I'll say 5 minutes. We'll probably go over a bit. Probably end up being 10. But I guess the point I'm making is I'm not prepared to commit to anything more than 5 minutes, as this is the last pose. It's going to be a tricky one for a final pose. We normally do really easy poses to finish, but here we are. I thought time-wise we would have more time for this. Anyway, all right. Take care, Thomas. Thanks for joining. Get back to typing your essay. Well, I'm guessing you probably should, but this feels like this is way funner. Okay. Oh, let me reset the clock. Quick sip of tea. Excuse me. All right. Oh, well, thank you for the kind words. Okay, let's see what we can do here. This is going to be a bit of a challenge. Let's try and find some larger rhythmical ideas to start with. We've got some really forced perspective on this torso. This arm is coming this way. For those of you who don't have access to the reference, there's a very good chance, even when I'm finished, that this drawing is going to make no sense. But here we are. All right. And this leg, rhythmically, we want to think about it coming down this way. This foot's his left foot behind, sitting in here. Scapular sitting here. Pectoral muscles coming this way, right? A latissimus sitting in here. We can actually see it quite clearly pulling this way. Deltoid. Trapezius. Not trapezius, tricep. The other T. His wrist is sitting here on top of his head. Look at like some of these shapes on the reference, not mine, but some of these shapes on the reference of this forearm and upper arm are just magnificent. See that stretch of this deltoid coming in here, just fantastic. Pectorals coming down this way, and deltoid is sitting up here. Scapula sitting here, rib cage coming down to the lower back, coming down this way and then into the gluteus, sitting in here. The oblique, because of the weird perspective, it's like we're looking at this cylinder going away from us in a heavy perspective here, and it's going to cause all kinds of problems with distortion of the how we're looking at this. But anyway, it's part of the fun, right? Serratus muscles coming in, sitting in here. The head's a bust, you can't get that content everywhere. No, but you can get it here often. If I'm learning, it can be difficult to remain diligent. That's my ADHD. I've never been technically diagnosed with these things, but I'm telling you, it's one of the reasons I work in charcoal and I work the way I do, is because I have very short attention span and patience for most things. it's actually one of the reasons why I love working in charcoal and I love doing this type of work, is because, you know, we're not having to wait for layers of paint to dry, and it's a very kind of immediate, we get an immediate kind of result. And I really like that. So I appreciate the struggle, but I would say that you might, you know, of all the disciplines, you might just find that something like this is something that you can actually, that will resonate with you, because of the immediacy that you can have in the work. I'm telling you, I have such a short attention span for these things. So don't be disheartened, or don't, you know, try to embrace it, and, you know, maybe even turn it into a strength. Oh, thank you. Well, watch me mess it up, James. Yeah, I'll just I'll find a way to wreck it. Ankle. We need to do another foot session sooner rather than later. I love thinking about this kind of a whole idea for the foot as almost like a sneaker. It really helps me subdivide and give the foot shape. You know, if you take this ankle bone sitting in here, right, and then you just kind of continue that as an idea, both front and back, it really helps subdivide and helps show where how the foot and the, you know, the tibia and the fibula kind of connect with that, and helps kind of make sense of those things. If you just even, you know, you look at your own, or you look at your partner's foot, and you look at how this whole kind of separation happens in this region, really helps. And then you look at this and the heel, and then this kind of section in here, really helps make sense of feet, and helps simplify them down to something a lot more basic that you can hopefully work with. Do you have any tip for someone who wants to work with drawing? You mean as in have a living working in drawing? Well, that would be a big question to answer, and probably not one to tackle right at the tail end of a stream, to be honest. There's a number of things you would need to know to even answer that question with any sense of accuracy. Like, you know, what type of work. You know, it's going to be very dependent on how you approach the practice and all the rest. I would say, just in general, it's probably an incredibly challenging time to try and be creating a living drawing, especially if it's only drawing. You know, obviously you can work in video games and animation and things like that, but there's a lot of great artists and very little work in some of those fields. You know, you want to be dovetailing that with things like digital art and being able to work in different disciplines. So it's a multi-tiered question that I'm not really in a position to answer just sitting here. drawing this dude, if you know what I mean. Just kind of get a sense of where his underwear is sitting in there. Something like that, right? And then these are coming up. Sitting in here and coming down this way. Something like that. I hope you got that gift article. It's from the New York Times about the foot drawing that is supposed to be Michelangelo's. Margot, I did get that. Thank you. I meant to reply to you. I did not. I apologize. Not that I'm sure you're looking for an apology at all, but yes, I did get it. Thank you very much. I remember you said you used to sketch with ballpoint a lot. Love to see some others. I'm not asking you to dig them out, just saying. Yeah, I used to work with, well, with ballpoint, to kind of like with a rollerball type pen. Yeah, look, it's something we could look at some point. It's something we should probably do at some point. It's just for me, it's been a long time since I worked in those mediums, but yeah. Very interesting pose, and quite the challenge, really, you know, to make sense of this. Embrace the struggles, exactly, you know, embrace it. That's it. And come to peace with the fact, and I think this applies to no matter what you're studying. The old worn out mantra, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Make that your happy place if you can. That's where the magic will happen. Just on the edge of out of your comfort zone. Not too far. Just on the edge. And just get comfortable with the idea of practice. And letting practice be the end result, and not be looking for something at the end of it, if that makes sense. Let the process be the reward. Doesn't matter if you've got, you know, we're in the gym right now. We're not trying to make pretty drawings. We're trying to work through ideas. If you can find peace in that, and not always be looking for product at the end, you'll actually find that you give yourself a real opportunity for growth. And with the, oh, you know what I've missed? Completely missed it, and I'm almost tempted to leave it off. It's his other arm. I'm going to leave it. We've been doing this too long. It's just for those who can't see the reference, his other arm is coming down this way, and he's just kind of supporting on it there. Nah, you get the idea. I just figured out a way to have the reference photo on my iPad full screen. And the live stream picture in picture, I'm guessing. Alright, yeah, great, good. You're very welcome, Richard. Jas Picard asks, did you learn figure drawing technique by following any particular resource? If I had to, no, I would say it came from multiple sources. But in saying that, if I spent a lot of time studying at what's called the American Animation Institute in Burbank, California, where both Glenn Vilpu and my main teacher, a gentleman by the name of Carl Ganas, teaches. I believe he still teaches there. they both teach very similar ideas in slightly different approaches, but it's essentially the same. You know, a lot of the California school of figurative art, figure drawing, they a lot of them coming from that same kind of well, we'll say. Walt Stanchfield was one of the people back in the day. Feitelson was another one that was teaching my teachers. And there's names I'm absolutely forgetting here, so apologies to them. But yeah, so it's really, you could say it's a redesign or rethink of kind of like the Renaissance approach. You know, if you go back and you look at some of the figurative drawing from the Renaissance times, it's following much more that system than, say, the academic method of site size and grids and making copies, right? We're trying to get kind of out of that that space of thinking of trying to copy, and rather trying to think in terms of volume and mass, and trying to think more maybe like sculptors, right? We're thinking about form, how it relates. We're not just trying to do perfect copies of the model, if that makes sense. So that's, if I had to cite one resource, I would have to say that those years spent at the Animation Institute was probably where I picked up a lot of stuff. But in saying that, I'd already been working in the animation industry almost 20 years when I started studying there, or certainly 15 years. I'd already got a lot of knowledge from other areas and other artists. I learned a lot about figurative art from working with other animators and other artists in the animation industry, which, once again, this style of drawing really tends to lend itself to, right? So that list of teachers should, by all accounts, include some of my colleagues, people that I worked with, worked alongside, or worked for within the animation industry for those years before I ever even started taking quote-unquote formal figurative art classes. I hope that answers your question. It's an important question, but it's also important that I don't glaze over the answer, if that makes sense. Guys, we did it. Guys and girls, we did it. Richard Denton, right? No, Harry Carmian was Glenn Vilppu, not Glenn Vilppu, Carl Ganass's teacher. Harry Carmian was Ganass's teacher, and I think Lorna Feitelson, am I saying that right? I think Feitelson was Carmian's teacher, who taught Feitelson. That I don't know, but that's kind of the lineage. Talk about rambling. But here, hopefully we're all having a nice time. With that said, it's time over for today. We'll be back next week. By all accounts, all things being equal, we'll be back next Tuesday, same time, 5 p.m. GMT. For those of you who are not members and you'd like to draw along, you can have access to the reference if you want. I think it's like $3 a month or something. Then you have access to the links, and you can follow along and draw along, and it's a nice time. Hopefully you'll learn something. And I also stop sometimes and do little demos, and we try different things. So it's a bit of a laugh. Hope you've enjoyed it. Once again, folks, do yourselves and me a little favor, if you feel so inclined. Head over to Grafit Studio, their Gumroad page. You'll find links down below. On my website, you'll see it's plastered with the things right now, because there's a 50% deal off all of their reference packs, which I genuinely, I don't say this often, but I can't recommend enough. They are superb, and they're beautifully put together, and they're great resource for what we're doing. So show them some love. I'll see you all next week. Take care. See you then.